Welcome to the IREL Podcast. Are you sick and tired of real estate gurus pitching their next pre-construction deal, only to find out years later they were completely wrong? Worried the next overseas conference you spend thousands to attend will only be used to sell overpriced lots and deserted developments? Join thousands of other international real estate seekers who are looking for their place in paradise without the sales pitch. Straight from your host, Taylor White.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Questions 3 episode of the IREL Podcast. I am your host, Taylor White. Head on over to irelpodcast.com/Q3 for complete show notes. We have a solo episode today with yours truly, and I want to address another great question I have received from a listener of this podcast. Let's roll into it. Joe from Panama City asks, Taylor, I have a two-part question. I am from the States and have been checking out Panama City. I hear people talking about pre-construction apartments and developments quite often, but not sure about what it means. Can you better explain what pre-construction means and then some pros and cons of each? Absolutely, Joe. First, let me give you the Wikipedia definition. Pre-construction involves performing preliminary planning and engineering in order to define the project, identify potential issues, and analyze cost impacts. Now, here's mine. It's when you go out to a project site and there's nothing actually being built yet. So there's nothing there. There might be a fence around the project. It might have building materials and trucks on site ready to work, but work hasn't started yet. The next phase would be in construction, and that typically would be from when the project started to closer to completion. The following phase after that is something I have coined pre-completion, where the project is about 75% or more done, but not yet completed, and owners are about ready to close and do final paperwork and get keys. Then once everything is done, permits are in order, keys are ready, I would say that is completed. Of course, this is in the broad sense, and it could be any number of things. Let me give you an example. If you're buying a house in a larger development that won't be complete for many years, these definitions would really be focusing on the house you are actually buying and not the development itself, as it could be getting completed in many phases and take a long time. So you might have condos being built in phase 1, smaller houses and lots in phase 2, larger houses and more land in phase 3, and so on. These types of phases are also very popular for condo projects that involve more than one tower. So you might be buying pre-construction in Tower 1 before it begins, and then Tower 2 construction might begin once Tower 1 sales have been determined, and then Tower 3 construction might begin once Tower 1 is about complete, Tower 2 is about 50% done, and so on. It just depends on how many different phases the development is scheduled to have. Let's talk about 3 pros first. The first that comes to mind would be the price. Since there is nothing there yet, the idea would be that you are buying at a discount to the future purchase price when it's complete many months or years later. The second that comes to mind would be the terms. Instead of making one lump payment, whether by cash or financing, you'd be given terms over the course of the construction period. This could be broken down many ways depending on the developer. You might be putting down 25% at signing, the second 25% once a certain amount of construction is done, the third 25% when construction is almost complete, and then the final 25% once your keys are ready. Or, of course, many other payment and time breakdowns depending on what you and the developer agree upon. A third pro, which is in line with terms, would be leverage. Let's assume you put down 25% or $50,000 to keep the numbers easy once you sign your contract with a developer in Belize to buy a house valued at $200,000. Now your $50,000 down controls the entire house valued at $200,000. If your house appreciates 10% the first year during the construction period, it's 10% on the $200,000 purchase price, which is $20,000, and not 10% on the $50,000 down payment, which is $5,000. So using leverage, your return was 400% more. Of course, it's not always this easy, so let's check out 3 cons. The first and most obvious would be the fact that you don't know if anything will ever get built. It's not uncommon in many parts of the world, especially where getting local financing is tough, that you will see many projects that didn't get off the ground or are partially completed, or where they never got the proper permits in order to build in the first place. Well, that definitely does happen. A more common variation on this would be that it takes the developer much, much longer than anticipated to get completed. This could be anything from a few months late to many years late. To give you a real-life example of mine, I once bought a small apartment in Casco Viejo, Panama that was supposed to be complete within a year, and it ended up taking over 5 years before it was done. The second con is something I like to call life happens. This is when you know what life and finances are like today, but you have to anticipate what they will look like years and years down the road during the construction period. What happens if you get divorced, or you lose your job, or you are self-employed and your business starts to struggle? There are a lot of things in life that can happen, and if you get too aggressive on using leverage, it could really put you in a bad spot. The third is not fully understanding your contract. I have been involved in many pre-construction launches where you get these emails about amazing buys on just launched buildings, and if you don't act the same day, you will lose out on untold profits. Of course, the contract wasn't translated into your native language for you to read over. The apartments you thought you were buying Ocean View aren't. The payment terms the email stated were different than what your contract said. And if you don't wire down the funds today, you will miss out completely. Then, by the time you had the contracts translated, had a lawyer look everything over, got back your signed copies from the developer, and really find out what you were buying is different than what you thought, it's already too late to do anything about it. Well, there you have it. We have found out what pre-construction means, as well as 3 pros and 3 cons when going this route when buying real estate. What do you think? Let me know at irelpodcast.com/Q3.
You have been listening to the IREL Podcast with Taylor White. Be sure to hit up IRELpodcast.com for more. That's IRELpodcast.com. Thanks for listening.